So we're almost at the close of this chapter, and I thought I would just give a quick overview of where we've come to. And so if we go back a couple of chapters, actually, we realize that we're in the section of Vamana Dev is almost about to appear. And so how did this begin? Bali Maharaj, by really pleasing his own spiritual master, has gained power and was able to defeat the demigods. And when their mother, the mother of the demigods, Aditi, recognizes this, she feels extremely morose. And so when Kashyapa Muni comes back from so many austerities and penances, he sees her distress and he asks her, what has happened? And she tells him, and he offers her realizations and philosophy to try to help her understand why this has happened to the demigods, but that doesn't satisfy her heart. And so he tells her, well, you can do this Payo Vrata, and from there, please the Lord. And so she expresses interest in this. And so within this in the last chapter, we hear that she successfully completes this vrat. And afterwards, in this chapter, at the beginning, the Lord, being so pleased, appears before her in his four-handed form. And she's just overwhelmed. And she offers numerous prayers to the Lord. And the Lord tells her that I'm so happy by your prayers, and I will come as a plenary portion of myself as your son. And so this is where we are. And so Kashyapa Muni, being so realized, recognizes when this plenary portion has entered into him, and now Aditi has become pregnant with the Lord. And so the first question when I read this verse, and if it's okay, we'll just start off with a little bit of interactivity. The first question was, why does Brahma appear to offer prayers? Does anybody have any ideas? Why is it that Brahma appears? I mean, there's so many demigods, and we'll hear in the next chapter how many demigods come, but why Brahma? Any thoughts?
One thought that comes to my mind is that the Srimad Bhagavatam is the commentary of Vedanta Sutra, and Brahma is the creator of the universe. And so if Brahma himself is coming to offer prayers, it's kind of like it sort of goes without saying that the rest of the demigods would offer prayers as well. It kind of it establishes a certain superiority of Vishnu, that even Brahma is coming to offer prayers. So it might be a point that the Bhagavatam is making.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you, Dayal Gauranga Prabhu. Wonderful. Anybody else?
Hare Krishna.
Haribol.
I was just thinking about the fact that Lord Brahma offers his Brahma Samhita, his prayers at the beginning of creation, and thinking in a way, at least in that context, maybe he's the original glorifier of the Lord. And so it's appropriate that he is the first one to do that.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Okay. Yes. Fantastic. Anybody else, in case anybody has something different?
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Haribol.
Well, one thing is that Lord Brahma is also he came from Lord Vishnu. So for him that's he has direct understanding that this is my creator, and an expansion of him just came. So I have to go and greet him.
Wow, we're in the midst of many realized souls here. It's amazing. Beautiful, beautiful. All of these are just, yes, absolutely. Those were all there. And so I'll stop here. I would love to hear from everybody. So when I first read this, none of these came to mind for me. I was really just perplexed. I was thinking, why does Brahma come? And so I went to Rasanath and I asked him, and he also mentioned this point of Brahma is the creator. He's the first engineer, the originator of the Brahma Samhita, all of this. And then he brought up this other point, which I had never thought about. What is Brahma's relationship to Kashyapa Muni? He is his father, which means that he is Vamana Dev's to-be grandfather, which makes the relationship even more close, right? And so this is just so, so beautiful here. And this was what my meditation came about from these verses, that Brahma is actually showing us two things here. He's showing us sensitivity, right? Because he is related from two sides to Vamanadev. One from this position of being a servant, and one from being a grandfather, which is just sweet. Because if we experience what it's like as a mother, I experience a certain type of love to my daughter, but I see with her grandmother, it's a completely different type of love, right? And there is just this intimacy and there's this closeness. And so we also see from here that Brahma is being so sensitive. There's no announcement that's being made, right? He just immediately, he recognizes the Lord has entered into the womb. And so what does he do? He extends his personalism. He becomes so personal towards the Lord as a baby within the womb. And how does he do so? He does this through primarily prayer and chanting. And this is something really beautiful here that Prabhupada speaks about in this purport, and that he actually akins that chanting is prayer. Chanting is prayer. And the way in which this chanting occurs is that Brahma starts to recite these beautiful names of Vishnu. Beautiful, beautiful names. And I won't take over the next few verses, but I'll just offer a few of these names that Brahma, especially in the next verse, offers to the Lord. He calls him by the name Urukrama, one whose activities are very glorious. Brahmanya Devaya, the Lord of the Transcendentalists, and Traigunaya, the controller of the three modes of nature. And so as I was thinking about this, what came up for me was that in my own chanting, I was thinking, how often do I think of my relationship with Krishna? You know, normally I think of Krishna as up here and I'm down here, and that's a far distance. It makes it very difficult to feel and experience closeness. But to remember that we are part and parcel of Krishna means to actually remember that I'm Krishna's family. I'm actually Krishna's family. And if I'm Krishna's family, how would I interact with a family member? How would I offer words? How would I offer glorification, perhaps even ask for help, which is what we do when we chant the Hare Krishna mantra. We're actually asking for help. We're asking for service, and we're asking for help. And so we see that if we can just start to tap into this connection that we are Krishna's family, our relationship with him will become so much more personal. And that's what we'll spend a little bit of time on today. How can we develop a more personal relationship with Krishna where we can truly be sensitive to Krishna? And so we'll see this. So one is through chanting. And one way I was thinking of personally was we chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, but then perhaps there are also other names of Krishna that we are extremely attracted to. And to really spend time with those names. When we understand what those names mean, it immediately ties and increases that intimacy between who we're calling out to and our own relationship with the Lord. Okay, so we'll speak about 3 different ways in which we can really try to develop a personal relationship with the Lord. So 4 different ways. One is chanting. The second is through comfort. And so we see in the upcoming verses how the different demigods will come and offer numerous articles to Vamanadev. Now, this is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. I don't really think he needs a straw belt, a water pot, an umbrella, a danda, I mean, Aditi goes as far as to give him underwear, right? So, I mean, this is the Supreme Lord. I don't think he needs all of this, but But he accepts this. And this is the beauty of, this is what personalism is about. It's about thinking about the other person and what we can do to please them. And so we have similar opportunities in ensuring that the Lord's comfort is also attended to. And we do so through deity worship, right? And when I was in Mayapur during Mayapur Academy, one of the things that just completely gave me such an incredible perspective into what personalism is just watching how they would have they would have rooms filled with people who would be stitching different outfits for the Lord, that they would have an entire team of devotees ensuring flower arrangements daily for the Lord, and to ensure that the garlands were fresh, to ensure that the cleanliness of the temple. And why? Why is that necessary? Because the Lord appreciates that. And the Lord feels comfortable in those environments. And when I was thinking of this in terms of comfort of the Lord, one of the things that came to mind was Rath Yatra, because for the 2 weeks before Rath Yatra, the Lord falls sick. And so he's cloistered and he's fed different fruit juices and herbal concoctions. And it reminded me of this pastime, a contemporary pastime for us that Radhanath Maharaj speaks about, where he was on a Puri Yatra. And at that time, there were numerous doctors from Chaupati who had attended the Puri Yatra. And one of these doctors had this slight doubt in their minds that, is the Lord really sick? Is the Lord really sick? And somehow through Jagannath's grace, this devotee actually got a chance to go and see Jagannath. And Radhanath Maharaj describes it as only he can, that it was very, very early in the morning. And suddenly this doctor devotee burst into his room. He says, he's sick. He's actually sick. And Radhanath Maharaj is thinking, is there a devotee on the yatra that's really sick? We need to make sure that they're attended to. And finally, he asks this devotee, he says, Jagannath is actually sick. I put my hand on his forehead and my hand got burnt. And I think about that so often, because when we look at the deity, do we actually think that they may be hot? They may be cold. They may need they might need, I think of our small little Gopal. Maybe they need some toys. Maybe he needs some toys to play with. How often are we actually thinking about the Lord's comfort? And when we're able to do so, immediately our sensitivity increases and we start to relate to the Lord in the way that he actually looks at us. He looks at us and he's arranging always for our necessities. But are we reciprocating in any way? So that's one thing. How can we try to ensure the comfort of the Lord? That's one way we can try to think of really extending our personalism and sensitivity. The other way, probably our favorite way as devotees, is through offering foodstuffs, right? So that we can actually take that prasadam. And my favorite pastime of this is within the CC. And I hope you don't mind, but I'll actually read these verses. This is from the Antya Leela. And this is when Raghava Pandit and his sister Damayanti offer foodstuffs to the Lord. Now, for those who may not know, there are a few places where the Lord always is present in order to extend his association to the devotees. And so there are 4 places, and one of them is wherever Raghava Pandit and Damayanti cook. And so in this case, what they would do is that they would cook enough for a year for the Lord, for a year. And they would pack it so expertly that in days where there wasn't a refrigerator, everything would remain perfectly edible. And so I'd like you to just even take a moment, close your eyes, and just take in how Damayanti specifically thinks about how Lord Chaitanya will eat these foodstuffs. Okay. So Damayanti would make varieties of unparalleled food just suitable for Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to eat, and the Lord would eat it continually for 1 year. These are the names of some of the pickles and the condiments. Oh, thank you so much. That she would make. And so some of the pickles and condiments in the bags of Raghava Pandit: Amra Kashandi, Ada Kashandi, Jala Kashandi, Nimbu Ada, Amra Koli, Amshi, Amakanda, Tailamra, and Amasata. With great attention, Damayanti also made dried bitter vegetables into a powder. And this is the part that really, really pulled at my heart. Do not neglect Shukta because it is a bitter preparation. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu derived more happiness from eating this Shukta than from drinking Panchamrita, a preparation of milk, sugar, ghee, honey, and yogurt. Since Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he extracts the purpose from everything. Let's read that again. He extracts the purpose from everything. He accepted Damayanti's affection for him, and therefore he derived great pleasure even from the dried bitter leaves of Shukta and from Kashandi, a sour condiment. Because of her natural love for Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Damayanti considered the Lord an ordinary human being. Therefore, she thought that he would become sick by overeating and there would be mucus within his abdomen. Because of sincere affection, she thought that eating the Shukta would cure the Lord's disease. Considering these affectionate thoughts of Damayanti, the Lord was very pleased. Isn't that just incredible just to hear that she considered the Lord to be an ordinary human being. And in order to do so, she ensured that along with all of these incredible tasty preparations, that there would be these digestives. And she would ensure that the digestives were even palatable. She was such an incredible cook. This is being so personal in terms of offering foodstuffs. And I say this because this happens in our household very often. And I feel just so terrible even saying this, but my husband will sometimes comment we're trying to get something ready, we're trying to make an offering, and it almost feels like our deities are, as he terms it, food purifiers. It's just like, here you go, Krishna, please eat fast because we're on a time schedule and we need to eat. And personally for myself, I also see my own sad mentality, which is these are certain preparations that I like, such as pizza, and so Krishna, of course you must like this, because if you don't like this, how can I survive? And you say patram pushpam palam toyam, so you know what, pizza falls into that realm, we're okay. But just see that consciousness. The consciousness is so much entrenched in what I want. It's not actually based on what Krishna wants. And if so, there are devotees, and this is so incredible, who actually know how to make these preparations that Mahaprabhu likes. What if our mentality became, how can I find out? Because we know very specifically that is the glory of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Maybe we may not know the very specifics of what Krishna likes, but we know what Mahaprabhu likes. So what if we could actually find out and make those things for Mahaprabhu? Wouldn't that be amazing? I can't even imagine how Mahaprabhu might feel. He might feel like, wow, finally somebody understands my taste. It's not just, he's so accommodating, so he accepts anything that we do with love and devotion. But what if it was love, devotion, and attention and sensitivity to what the Lord wanted? And this is what sensitivity actually means. So that's one thing. So we talked about chanting, how we can chant, how we can ensure for the comfort, how we can really try to ensure that we offer things that the Lord likes. And finally, how can we, and this is probably the most subtle and perhaps the hardest to do, and I think this is only possible if our chanting is so attentive, when we're constantly engaging in reading with great attention the Bhagavatam, the CC, the Bhagavad Gita. How can we become attuned to the wishes of the Lord and what he wants for us in our lives? So I'll give an example of someone who does this so beautifully. So in the CC, we hear of Raghunath Das Goswami, right? And Raghunath Das Goswami came from this incredibly wealthy family. And at a young age, the spirit of renunciation entered into his heart. And all he wanted to do was serve Mahaprabhu. That's all he wanted to do. And we hear of how many times he tries to run away from home only to be brought back. We hear of how his father and his uncle would ensure that there were 10 guards with him at all times, to ensure that he wouldn't run away. And there are numerous times he tries to run away and he comes and he's brought back and he's just so devastated. And so finally, after some time, the opportunity comes where he actually is able to escape really to Puri. And at that time, right after he goes to Puri and his father realizes that they can't find him, he writes to Shivananda Sain and he asks Shivananda Sain, is Raghunath there? And Shivananda Sain says no. And so he essentially buys Raghunath Das Goswami some time. And then some more time passes, and then his father realizes he is in Puri. And at that time, what he does, his father, he realizes he can't bring Raghunath back home. So he sends him, I believe it's something like 400 gold coins and some servants. And so to ensure for his comfort. But what does Raghunath do? He takes that, and with that money he sends, he invites Mahaprabhu to his home 2 days a week for lunch for 2 years. For 2 years. And then suddenly, all of a sudden, he stops inviting him. And this is also so indicative of Raghunath Das Goswami. He never actually really interacts with the Lord directly. He often goes through Swarup Damodar, where he goes through Lord Nityananda. And so the Lord asks Swarup Damodar, he says, why isn't Raghunath inviting me anymore? He was inviting me for so long. And so Swarup Damodar says, I think it's because this is the reason that I believe this is happening. And that is that Raghunath felt, I invite Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu by accepting goods from materialistic people. And I know the Lord isn't satisfied by this. How nuanced is that? The Lord never said anything. In fact, he comes and he eats for 2 years. But Raghunath is so sensitive that he stops. And so Swarup Damodar says, this is why he stops inviting you. And the CC describes that Mahaprabhu actually just smiles and he says, this is very good. This is very good. And similarly, so this happens consistently with Raghunath Das Goswami. Another time, when he first comes to Puri, he begs alms at the Simhadwara gate of the Jagannath Puri temple. And after some time, he stops begging there. And when Mahaprabhu asks about that, and you can see this, there's this beautiful interchange of how when the devotee is sensitive, the Lord is sensitive. The devotee is sensitive, the Lord is sensitive, right? And so Mahaprabhu is just noticing all of these things. And so he asks, and it's really to just glorify Raghunath Das Goswami. And so Swarup Damodar tells Mahaprabhu, well, he felt, and this is such a heavy word to use, but he says, he felt like he was being a prostitute, begging alms from the Simhadwara gate. And Mahaprabhu actually says this. He says, and I'll read this quote. He says, this is the mentality of one who, when they're trying to really practice renunciation, and this is in glorification of Raghunath Das Goswami, he says, because for one who's begging alms at the Simhadwara gate, he may feel, here is a person coming near. He will give me something. This person may give me something. The person who just passed did not give me anything, but another person will come and he will give me something. And thus, a person in the renounced order gives up his neutrality and depends on the charity of this person or that. And Mahaprabhu bestows his appreciation and deep affection for Raghunath Das Goswami when he does this by personally giving him a stone from Govardhan Hill and a garland of small conch shells. And then afterwards, and I can't even imagine this, he personally instructs Raghunath Das Goswami on how to worship this Shila. So this is what is, it's amazing. Very often I was thinking, we hear about Lord Brahma, we hear about Brahma in the Brahma Vimohana Leela, and sometimes we may feel a little bit like, oh, Brahma, like you always mess up. It's not, I mean, it's so sad. I feel like that's not true. I mean, this verse indicates like how realized, how sensitive Brahma is. And this is something that we can truly, truly learn from Brahma, that we can also try to really develop this sensitivity, this personalism to the Lord, whether it's in the form of the Lord's holy name, whether it's in the form of the Lord's Archa Vigraha, or whether it's in the form of the Lord's devotees in order to actually serve them. And so maybe I'll stop here to just ask if there are any questions, comments, or reflections, if that's okay.
Haribol.
Hari Hari.
Just a beautiful class. And it was like a thunderbolt when you said, we are Krishna's family. And I have such a deep attachment to my family here, and I would never neglect them as sometimes the way that I neglect Krishna. And it was reminding me, Yadnath said in a class a couple of weeks ago, like you get a little, I don't know, you forget to bow down every time you brass in front of the deities. And I remember he said, they are people. And now you're saying they are family. It'll just make me so much more attentive. So thank you so much. That was just a wonderful point.
I'm so glad. Actually, what you said just reminded me of something. I was listening to Radha Bhakti had given a class a week or so ago, and she was extracting some of these beautiful points from the verses that she was reading from. And one of the points was, one should joyfully pay obeisances to the Lord. And that hit me really hard because normally I'm like one hand down, half my like head up, kind of going like, okay, I think I've fulfilled my quota, because I'm running after my daughter. I'm like, there's something always that's more important. But one should joyfully do that. And on the point of obeisances, I remember that this also struck me, like both hands should be on the ground, and for many of us who carry a bead bag, sometimes we have a bead bag and the bead bag goes on the ground, and it's like, no, actually, again, this is a form of not being sensitive. Put the bead bag like on a table, pay your obeisances with your full heart. So thank you. It reminded me of that. I need to remember that.
Thank you so much, Vrindavan. I'm so much appreciating just the maturity and depth of your points and throughout the class. There's so many things I was saving up. I was just thinking, oh, I love that point. I love that point. I love that you brought in the story of Raghava Pandit and Damayanti, because I didn't really know that story some years ago. And I went with my father to Panihati, where I believe it's near Panihati where they live. We went to their house, and they still have a kitchen there, and they've made all these model vegetables out of plaster, like arranged around, so that's sort of like a meditation that you can see that this was a working kitchen where they were preparing prasad for Mahaprabhu. And it really, hearing that story and being in that place, it really touched my heart and impressed the point that you were making, how personal, how lovingly and with so much personal sort of familial care they were looking after him. And I know we are always sort of tending to trickle towards being impersonal, and like you say, treating the Lord as a purifier of this and that. So I love this reminder, and I feel like we need these reminders daily, if not frequently through the day. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much, Genevieve. Thank you for also bringing up, I've been to Panihati, I believe. No, I haven't been to Panihati. So to hear that there's this kitchen with like, I can't even imagine what it must feel like. And especially for those devotees who are such incredible cooks. I know how how close you were to Yamuna. I think of Gorsharan Prabhu, you know, Doyal Gauranga, like there's so many devotees here who are such incredible cooks. Like I can't imagine what it would be like, especially for all of you, you know, because it's so near and dear to your own hearts, and to imagine to be in a place where there was so much love and care and attention that was given to this, and to ensure that the Lord would just, you know, he would just be so happy and feel so nourished, not just by the love and devotion, but actually by the preparations themselves.
Mm.
So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mother Vrindavan Vinodini. It's such a beautiful way of inspiring everyone to develop a personal relationship. I personally loved the point, especially you made about thinking about the comfort of the deities, because once you regularly start worshipping, it works the other way. You become you end up becoming insensitive to the deities' comfort, because it's every day you have to do certain things. After a while, it feels like okay, it doesn't matter or something like that. So it was a good reminder for me to know, okay, we need to look for, means we need to actually think these are persons and I need to actually make sure they are comfortable. Thank you for reminding. And I also, another point that I remembered was in one of the lectures that Radhanath Maharaj gave about Raghav Pandit and Damayanti. He was saying that they would send so much for a year. So, and Maharaj was saying, how was it being like preserved for a year? Because things don't stay for a year, and those days there were no like artificial preservatives, or it's not like there is a refrigerator. So then Maharaj was saying the real preservative was her love. So
Wow.
that's what was, and Mahaprabhu was like Swarupa Damodar Goswami would just save everything in a room, and they also showed a particular room in Gambhira where all those items that Swarupa Damodar Goswami would store. It's like a huge place. All boga would be stored there. So and then he would bring whenever Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wants to have. So and Maharaj was explaining how it's the love of Damayanti that was acting as a preservative of all these preparations, and he was not thinking, oh, it's a year-old preparation. And every time Mahaprabhu tasted it was tasting as if it was made then, like just the day when he was about to eat. So it was, the freshness was kept both by their love, both of their love for each other. So that's what the point Maharaj was making.
Wow. Thank you so much for bringing that in. That's so profound. So beautiful. Thank you.
One of when I was a younger brahmachari, one of my temple authorities put it in a similar light. He said that the altar is not a prasadam vending machine. You know, you put in boga and out comes prasadam. And sometimes, especially, you know, I learned to cook in the temple, and so, and you know, there were times when I wasn't as attentive, or the offering just didn't come out well. Like you can tell I wasn't following a recipe or doing this or that. And sometimes as a chastisement, I would mention he would tell me sometimes that the Lord did not accept this offering. You know, like, you know, and I would cook for the temple, and he would say, you fed everybody boga, you're all the devotees, because, you know, it's not a given. It's not a given that the Lord is going to accept this offering, you know. And so, like you said, patram pushvam phalam toyam yome bhakti prayachati, that with love and devotion, I will accept it. And so I think it's also that it was sometimes it would come across a little harsh at the time, a little bit, and but the reality is that it's not that if we just put food on a plate and put it in front of an altar, it becomes prasadam. That it's that love and that actually is what you know becomes prasadam. And I think, you know, Janavi mentioned, you know, Yamuna Devi, and that intensity, and that devotees would tell stories about prasadam that they had directly from Srila Prabhupada, and the surchargement they felt of just getting actually prasadam that Prabhupada cooked. And so it's like prasadam is not just like a category of food, but it's actually, you know, a level of you can feel actually when somebody cooks genuine prasadam and it's offered with love, like you feel that, as opposed to me just putting food on a plate and putting it in front of the altar. So he would kind of reference, sometimes he would say as a chastisement, if I was not attentive or something like that, he would say, like, this is boga, the Lord did not accept this offering. or that it's not a prasadam vending machine. It doesn't work like that.
Wow. So thank you so much, Doyle. Such great points, especially this point. I mean, it really hit me that when you said this, that just because you put, the boga in front of the Lord doesn't mean that it was accepted. I think very often, at least my mentality is, well, I put it in front of the Lord. I mean, of course it's accepted then, right? But that's not true. And I think that's, again, it goes to this point of personalism. The Lord has free will, right? Like the Lord has free will to either accept or not accept. And when we kind of impose that because I put it in front of you, I kind of mumbled some mantras, that means that you've accepted it. Not true.
Yeah. What was the story of the little boy? Whose son was it? That
Raghunandan.
Raghunandana. He would put the food in front and Krishna just stood there or sat there.
Yes.
He was like, oh my God, he's not eating it. You know what I mean? Like, if my father's going to chastise me if you don't eat this food. And he would beg and he would beg. And it was just sitting there. It's like, the Lord's not accepting it. And then the Lord literally got off the altar and would eat it. And then the father would come back and there'd be no food on the plate. He'd be like, what the heck happened? Like, the Lord ate it. He was like, what are you talking about? The idea, it was like he'd put it, please accept this. Please accept this. That mood was very sweet. I don't exemplify that at all, but it was a reminder.
A reminder to us all. Definitely myself.
So just to add a small kind of a question, which is also a reflection come question, I would say. Means today I'm not pure enough. But these kind of reminders can actually inspire me to go close to the actual standard. But still, it's not going to be very easy for immediately go there. So in between, how do we make sure actually accepts my
Would you like to offer your reflection on that first?
Okay. What I've heard, like as a pujari, when I'm being trained, one of the most difficult services while doing deity worship is making an offering for me, because many times I feel what Bhagavatam Prabhu was telling me, I'm going to feed boga to all the residents. I would fear like it's a huge responsibility. What if Krishna does not accept this? He will be hungry and I'll be cheating everyone. So I always felt it's a very tense service to do. Dressing, okay, it's the turban is on the head of the Lord, but you don't know if the food is in his belly when you put the plate before. So I always like have that anxiety while trying to offer. So the only way I always feel is like, okay, I'm just doing it on behalf of my spiritual master. It is his responsibility. I would just kind of push it to think like that. Okay, I can't do anything. Please take care. It's not just a boga or he's not feeling hungry. I don't want to be the offender who keeps the Lord hungry. That's what I think generally. But yeah, what is the right way you can add some points?
I mean, I feel you spoke about it so beautifully. I think the only way is to truly recognize our position, and our position is one of, there's so many gaps, there are so many holes in how we show up in perhaps our own ability to maintain our sincerity consistently, our ability to really tap into the fact that I am just an instrument of the Guru Parampara. And I mean, that just really touched my heart when you said that. I think that, oh my God, Krishna will go hungry and I'm going to offer boga to everybody. I mean, that's I think to just be able to tap into that consciousness is really what makes Krishna so, I would say, it actually melts his heart, I think. Because when the living entity comes and says, I know I'm not enough, but here, this is all yours, and I'm just trying to like awkwardly give this back to you. Would you please accept it? That mood is just, how could it not melt anybody's heart? I mean, and the Lord is just so compassionate. And it actually reminds me of, today is also the appearance of Sri Virabhadra or Virachandra, right? And there's a little bit that's spoken about him in the Sri Bhakti Ratnakar, but then I was also hearing just a small snippet of I guess it was a class that Radhanath Maharaj gave, and he speaks of how that Veera Chandra or Veerabhadra is actually the energy of compassion of Lord Nityananda. And that just struck me that, wow, today of all days, you know, we're speaking about like, how can we truly become more personal? How can we truly become more sensitive to the Lord's needs? What a glorious personality we can really pray to, because there's this pastime that takes place. Apologies, I think I'm going slightly over time. I'll make this very short. That in one of the Gaur Purnima festivals, that Sri Veerachandra is dancing, and when he's dancing, whoever he glances upon becomes, you know, the love of Godhead awakens within their hearts. That's what takes place. And during this time, there's this blind man who is actually feeling kind of hurt, because he can't see anything. He can hear the excitement. He can hear whatever is going on, but he can't see the Lord. And within his heart, he just prays and he says, oh, if I could only, just for 1 second, if I could see the Lord dancing. And Veerachandra is so merciful. And so he immediately picks up on this extremely sincere desire of this man. And within an instant, his sight is restored and he's able to see Veerachandra. And that is the compassion. You know, I mean, when I heard that Veerachandra was the energy of compassion of Lord Nityananda, I thought, wow, we've hit the jackpot, actually. The energy of compassion. Shri Gaurachandra, Shri Radha Muralidhar ki jai. So perhaps that's a nice way, especially on today of all days, to truly pray to this most munificent energy of compassion in the form of Veerachandra.